The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. I am Ralph Tycho with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. Welcome to another offering of vintage sports in the zone. We have with us tonight one of the greatest panels of all time. DavidHubler is here. Hello, David.
Hello, good evening.
George Case III. Hello, George.
Hi, everybody.
Alan Blumkin.
Hello there, everybody.
And to lead us tonight in a discussion, Mr. Hal Bock. Enjoy your night, guys. It's the greatest panel since Dick Schaap tried this. His panels didn't hold a candle to mine. Go get them, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Let's get started. A couple of weeks ago, someone asked about on Facebook. Someone asked about your favorite baseball movies. My favorite baseball movie was a kind of a sad movie called Bang the Drums Slowly, and it was not about the Houston Astros and their sign-stealing escapades, but it could have been, because this week it came out that the Astros in 2017 were using a very technically sophisticated sign-stealing arrangement in which they had a camera in center field focused on the opposing catcher, and it would relay the signs, the signals, to a television monitor in the dugout, and they were picking up the pitches that way, and they would alert their batters by banging a drum. If one bang on the drum meant it was a changeup or not a fastball, and two bangs was a fastball. So I ask you, gentlemen, what you think of this routine. I mean, the commissioner got bent out of shape, as he should have been. There are going to be fines. There are going to be suspensions, because even though sign stealing has gone on forever in Major League Baseball, in every level of baseball, it's part of the game, but you're not supposed to use technology and equipment. You're supposed to use your eyes to steal signs. And there were some players who were experts at that, but the Astros have taken it another step. They now have used an illegal arrangement, and they won the World Series, by the way, that year, 2017. And it's not like they haven't done it again. They were accused during the playoffs this year by the Yankees of using a system of whistles. And the manager was very, very insulted, A.J. Hinch. How could you accuse us of doing something like that? Well, by the way, you're in a rogue organization, and you have been for some time. They have a history. So I'm curious about what you guys think about sign stealing and what you think about the Astros and the problems that they're going to face when this investigation is finally concluded.
Okay, I'm going to say something, Hal. I wanted to congratulate you on this topic. I think it's very appropriate for this after the World Series and what's been going on in baseball. And I know that in a couple of weeks we're going to talk about the winter meetings and some of these harebrained schemes about the minor leagues and all that. But when it comes to the sign stealing, I have to say that baseball sign stealing has been something that's going on for years. Some players and managers are really expert at it. But we haven't had this problem with the technology that apparently has come forth with the Astros. So it's something I guess the commissioner and Major League Baseball and whatever is going to have to deal with, because if somebody did it, somebody's going to come up with a different way. So, we live in a different world today, and technology is going so fast that who knows, maybe there's going to be a technology that's going to, all of a sudden prevent anything happening like this again. But on the other hand, it might be a new technology that give a certain team an advantage if they develop that. So, I'm sort of ambivalent. I, have been around the game all my life. I understand sign stealing. It's part of the game. but the technology involved today makes it a whole different ball game as far as I'm concerned.
You know, the interesting thing, guys, they made no effort to cover this up. They sent out emails to their scouts recommending that, this is leading up to the playoffs, recommending that they make every attempt to arrange for sign stealing and tell us what you think you need, cameras, telescopes, whatever technology you need. They sent out emails to their scouts. Then the World Series film from 2017 shows a picture of Jose Altuve, one of the best players in baseball, running up the dugout steps, and behind him you can see the equipment that they were using. Well, at least try to hide it. Don't be so flagrant about it. I just was amazed by that.
Yeah, you know what, Hal? I didn't. Yeah, I didn't know all those details that you just talked about, but that is pretty incredible that they weren't trying to hide it. So they must have felt that maybe they're going to get a slap on the wrist and that was going to be it. So I don't know. I'm not privy to what the decisions were made, but it seems rather obvious. And I saw some of the footage. I also saw, I think they had some batters are up, and you can hear the clanging of the drum or the garbage can or whatever the heck it was to signify a changeup. And a couple of them on the change-ups, the batters, put one out. So,
yep.
Obviously they were telegraphing and letting the players know through some kind of established code, the pitch that was coming. And you still had to hit it. But on the other hand, a change-up, if a guy's throwing a 100-mile-an-hour fastball and a change-up's coming, you're going to slow down your swing a little bit and wait on that pitch. And then, the way it is today with these big guys hitting it out, they're going to hit one out.
Well, when I say they're a rogue organization, Roberto Osuna, a relief pitcher for the Blue Jays, got himself in some hot water on a domestic violence suspension. He was suspended for, I think, 75 games, which is pretty major. I mean, that's not small potatoes. And in the midst of his suspension, the Astros traded for him. Well, talk about getting a bad character on your roster, but okay, he probably could throw the ball pretty good. And in the playoffs this year, I guess it was the championship series, Osuna came in and got the final couple of outs. And in the clubhouse, the assistant general manager taunted some female writers about how happy he was that he had Osuna on his roster, since the fact that he was a sexual predator didn't matter one bit. He could get guys out. And then when Sports Illustrated blew the whistle on that one, the Astros denied it. They said, well, that never happened. What are you talking about? Well, of course, it did happen. And they finally had to back off, and the assistant general manager, one of the young geniuses in the game, who's given us all the metrics and everything else, he got himself fired. And it's not the first time that somebody was fired by associating with the Astros. The general manager of the Astros is a guy named Jeff Lunau. Lunau came to the Astros from the St. Louis Cardinals. And when that happened in 2011, he became the general manager. The Cardinals had an employee named Chris Correa. Chris Correa hacked into the Astros website, their database, I should say, because he suspected that Lunau, when he went to the Astros from the Cardinals, took some proprietary material with him. It wasn't proven that happened, but Chris Correa got himself barred from baseball and, in fact, was thrown in jail. So stuff goes on around the Astros all the time. And this is just the latest example. But another curious part of this story is that 2017 team, the bench coach on the Astros that year was a guy named Alex Cora. He's now the manager of the Red Sox. So they play in the same league, and you can imagine that the Astros would be very hesitant to pull any shenanigans against the Red Sox, since Cora knows what's going on. The same thing is true with Carlos Beltran, who apparently was in the middle of all of this as the designated hitter. That was his last season as an active player. Beltran is now the new manager of the Mets, and he's being called in to talk to the commissioner about all of this. So this is kind of a messy story, and it's not going to stop anytime soon until the commissioner completes his investigation, and who knows when that'll be. But this is not pretty.
Hal, this is a friend of mine and I were discussing this a few days ago, and I told him this is not like the NCAA where they can take away, they vacate the positions. I think that they'll be able to keep their championship from 2017 and from their pennant winner this year, but they're going to should get substantial fines and maybe a bunch of draft choices taken from them.
I think there'll be suspensions as well. I think the manager and the general manager will be suspended for some period of time. I don't know how long, but they have to. They have to come down hard. You cannot do this. And the integrity of the game is at stake. And that's the one thing that baseball has always trumpeted, that the integrity of the game is the most important thing. Now, here's another interesting wrinkle in all of this. I call your attention to the World Series. The Astros played 4 games at home in this World Series, and they lost all 4 of them. So you wonder, well, what happened to the arrangement? What happened to the system of sign stealing? I don't know. I don't know whether they were frightened off or what, but they lost 4 games at home. And I find that very interesting, There's all kinds of twists and turns in this story.
The MLB rules prohibit the use of any electronic equipment and cameras to steal signs. But it's reminiscent of the Giants-Dodgers 1951 playoff.
Watch your step, Hubler.
Why?
You know who you're talking to here.
No, I'm just saying it's reminiscent of that. That's still a controversy as to whether or not that sign stealing went on from all the way out there in the Polo Grounds.
The story in 1951 was that the Giants had a telescope that a utility infielder named Hank Schenz brought home from World War II, and they had him in the center field clubhouse peering in through this telescope, relaying signs to the bullpen in right field, and the right field bullpen would relay the signs to the batters. That was the story. Now, I ask you, if that's true, if you buy that story, explain to me how, with the Giants leading in the playoffs 1-0 and needing one more victory to clinch the pennant, they went out at home in the Polo Grounds in Game 2 and lost 10-0. Were they not stealing signs in that game? Did they give the system a day off? I doubt it. Why would they not steal? If they were stealing signs before that, they certainly should have been stealing them then.
Sure, especially with a 1-game lead, and they only needed to win one more.
All you needed is one more game to win the pennant.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of questions about that story of the Giants in 1951.
Yeah, well, a lot of people do. I don't bring it up as saying it was factual. I'm just saying it's reminiscent of that story.
Yes, you're right. You're right. It is a story that went around, but I have questions about it because of exactly what I said. You don't lose a game 10-0 when you're you're positioned to win the pennant if you're stealing signs.
Do you think this thing with the Astros has the ability to be the biggest scandal since the Black Sox?
I do. I really do. Because you're meddling with the integrity of the game. And it's apparently not a one-day situation. It's apparently gone on for quite some time. And the evidence is there. I mean, how do you send out emails to your scouts inviting them to suggest ways to steal signs and get an edge,
And
of
course,
that's an awfully stupid thing to do, if you ask me. because my wife, the computer expert, tells me that emails live on in perpetuity. They're in the world someplace, and you can't eliminate them. So
well, and also the fact that it was done during the World Series, just like the Black Sox scandal.
Exactly.
I mean, the parallels are absolutely apparent. Had it been a couple of games in a series in April or May, no one would have, remembered it, or they might have been slapped with a fine. But the fact is that it was the game's premier attraction, the big one, the World Series.
The showpiece. That's the showpiece.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, now I'll ask you another question. I'll ask the three of you another question. We now know that the Astros were using technology to steal signs. The evidence is there. No question about it. What's the penalty?
It's, as I said before,
take the championship away.
No, they're not gonna strip them of championships. This is
right.
Not the NCAA where they used to take away a trophy from the school because one of their players had signed with an agent during the NBA war. I think, as I said before, I think they're going to get very heavily fined, and the biggest penalty that MLB can place on them is taking away a bunch of draft choices from them.
I agree with you. They're going to have to.
Yeah.
But what's the appropriate number? Do you guys have an opinion on what the appropriate number would be?
I think several years of first round or several years of first and second round. Because when you get down to the fourth, fifth round, that's not a real penalty.
Yeah, Alan and Hal and David, I don't really have an answer to Hal's question, but one thing I would like to know, and I don't know if you guys, who rules on this? Is this strictly a Manfred deal, or does he have to have a some kind of a staff that?
Well, there's no league presidents anymore.
Who levies the penalties on this?
It has to be the commissioners because there's no league officers anymore.
Yeah, right. I agree.
They consolidate everything. Yeah,
it's up to him.
Consolidate everything.
It's the same thing that happened. Pete Rose was banished from baseball by Bart Giamatti. He was the commissioner.
Right. Yeah.
The commissioner runs the game.
Right.
And I'm sure the commissioner's not happy about having this thing land on his desk, but he's going to have to make the decision. Now, he'll probably consult with other people in the game, like Joe Torre is in that front office there, in baseball's front office, and he's a very knowledgeable guy, so I'm sure the commissioner will pick his brain a little bit. But ultimately, the buck stops here. It's the commissioner's call. I agree with Alan. I think they've got to have a number of draft choices taken away. I think they have to be fined a substantial amount of money, and I'm not talking about $100,000 or $500,000. I'm talking in the millions. And I think there have to be suspensions. I think the manager knew what was going on, and the general manager knew what was going on, and the owner may have as well. So I think those guys have to be suspended. How long do you suspend them for? Well, maybe half a season. I mean, you don't want to. Once again, you're talking about the integrity of the game, and you don't want to put the Astros in a position where they can't compete.
Yeah, the last manager. I think the last manager to be suspended for a year was DeRocher in 1947.
DeRocher, by Happy Chandler, right?
Yeah.
But this is worse. This is more serious. DeRocher was suspended for bad behavior, for hanging out with the wrong crowd. This is the integrity of the game. This is cheating the game. You can't do that.
Well,
you cannot do that.
Baseball wants to also contract 42 minor league teams.
It's interesting.
Another story that came up the other day.
Subject we're going to be discussing in a couple of weeks. And I think that's outrageous. I mean, it's like those cities don't exist, Well, they do.
Yeah,
they do exist.
But when
minor league baseball is a big part of their fabric. So
when Luke comes on, he's got some really good examples and stuff. He'll be with us on the 10th of December.
I look forward to that.
It's interesting, though. You talk about things going around and coming around. It's 100 years since the Black Sox scandal. It's like an anniversary. 1919.
That's right. 100th anniversary.
Yeah. So it's
weird. Have we had a scandal of this magnitude since the Black Sox? I don't think so.
I don't either.
I can't think of one.
No.
Only there's been individual players and situations like that, but never a team. Never a team in the World Series since 1919.
Yeah, I mean, we've had players. Gaylord Perry came out to the mound with a utility belt, it seemed like, and the grease ball and all of that.
Right, and spitball.
And the corked bats. We had the corked bats for a while. But that's not the same as this.
No.
Number one, it's the World Series. It's the showpiece. It's the number one event in your sport. And number two, you're using technology. I understand stealing signs. That's gone on forever. Sign stealing. It's an art. And in fact, a good friend of mine and a good friend of David's just did a book, a second edition, Paul Dixon, of his book about the language of the secret language of baseball.
Right. Yeah,
and that's signs. And I had an interesting example of that. I was in spring training one year, and I went up to Lance Parrish, who was the catcher with the Detroit Tigers at the time, and I wanted to talk to him about signs. And he said, "Oh yeah, we have different signs for different circumstances." He said, "We have a sign for knocking a guy down, and whatever I do." Whenever I feel it's necessary to knock a guy down, I flash that sign. Well, that's part of baseball. But this arrangement goes beyond the pale as far as I'm concerned.
Well, and there's complicity there too, because all the players knew it was going on. It wasn't like a one man. Yeah, the whole team knew.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Everybody
Hal, can I ask you something? We hear all this stuff on the television and everything going on with the hearings and not to get into the politics, but who was the so-called whistleblower on this situation? I heard he was a pitcher or somebody with the Astros.
Fiers, who's now with the A's. Mike Fiers, who's now on the A's.
He had a pretty good season in 2017.
Yeah.
But he was not activated for the postseason, and that may have annoyed him a little bit. He is now with the Oakland Athletics, and he's the guy who blew the whistle. But there have been other whistles, and there's been other examples. There's a thing going on with Yu Darvish, who now is pitching for the Cubs, I think.
Yeah.
And he got into it with Christian Yelich about Yelich knowing what was coming. And, in fact, Darvish deliberately stepped off the rubber because he suspected that Yelich was picking up the signs from elsewhere and knew what was coming. And the funny part of that exchange was that Josh Donaldson, who's now a free agent, Donaldson was with the Cubs, with the Braves last year, who's now a free agent, said, "I wish I knew what was coming because he got a career batting average of about 150 against Darvish." So there's always that side of it, But this has gone on in baseball since day one. I mean, teams are always looking to get an edge.
Supposedly Bob Turley was a great sign stealer. And when he didn't pitch, Bob Turley, they sat him in the stands on one side of whatever dugout, and that was his job, was to steal signs.
I once talked to Bobby Thompson, the late Bobby Thompson, about the rumor that the Giants knew what was coming, and he said he never took a sign. He claimed he never took a sign. He said, but you know what? If you know what's coming, you still have to hit the ball. You still have to hit it. No matter whether you know what's coming or not, you have to hit it. And that's true, But it's a little easier if you know that a changeup is coming instead of a 95-mile-an-hour fastball. You adjust your swing,
Well, Thompson did hit a home run off Bracken in the first game of that playoff.
Yes, he did.
In Ebbets Field, yeah.
Which makes you wonder why Dressen brought him in to face Thompson in the third game.
don't get me started on Dressen. I think he was an absolute horrible manager.
Well,
yeah.
He would tell you otherwise if he were here today.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my thought on all of this shenanigans that the Astros pull. They're a rogue team, and they have been for some time. And I really truly hope that they're punished sufficiently so that other teams don't get the idea that this is a good thing to do. Because
they're going to have to. They're going to have to finish the investigation before spring training starts.
Oh,
they've got to go and get that taken care of as quickly as possible, and levy the penalties.
Right now, today we had a diversion because the Hall of Fame ballot came out today. So there's going to be a lot of discussion in the next week or so about, is Derek Jeter going to be unanimous? Who should also go in? Is so-and-so a valid candidate? Should he be on the ballot and so forth? That kind of discussion is going to go on and take the spotlight off this sign stealing, but it's not going to go away. It's still going to be on the commissioner's desk. The Hall of Fame announcement will be in January. He's got to come down on the Astros sometime before the start of spring training. He can't let it just linger,
I wonder if he's going to go before, the winter owners meetings coming up in December. Will he have any kind of decision by then? I don't know. But you're right, he does.
He might pick some brains at the owners meeting.
Yeah.
You asked me before whose decision this was going to be. It's going to be his decision, but I wouldn't be surprised if he goes to some of the older owners and some of the more distinguished owners and picks their brains about what they thought would be appropriate punishment for the Astros.
Or even something. He might even create a panel of some of those older, more venerable owners to work with him on this. But it can't be anybody from the division, the Astros division. It's got to be from the National League.
No, the Manfred is watching orders from some of the owners who really want to push this to a decision. I don't know if there's going to be a break, an even break, or but it has to be the owners. There's 30 teams. Take away Astros, 29. I think there has to be at least 20 that are appalled by this.
Yeah, but I would say that for expedience sake, you pick a panel of the 5 or 6 most venerated owners in baseball, the sort of untouchables, to work with the commissioner if needed. I don't know the insides of what's going on, of course, but that to me would seem like one way to create a group going forward to deal with the problem, as opposed to just Manfred making the decision on his own. It would have more. I think it would have more weight.
If you were the commissioner, what would you do? Would you do that? Would you get a committee together, or would you reserve decision for yourself?
No, I would get a decision. I mean, I would get a committee. They're not. I'm not bound by them as the commissioner, but I certainly would want input.
The two commissioners that defied the wishes of the owners were Happy Chandler and Faye Vincent, and they both were fired because they didn't march to the owners' tune. Once Landis passed, there was no way any of the owners were going to let a commissioner of that type come in again.
Well, so you're saying that Manfred doesn't
He will not act on his own. No, I don't believe it.
Well, that's an interesting perspective.
Well, I said that's why I said a committee would actually, as Alan was getting at, would give him some cover, plus some legitimacy going forward, because he'd have the backing of a group of the owners.
Well, you better make it all National League owners, because
that's what I said. I just said, you have to make it National League owners. You can't go into and certainly not anyone in the Astros division.
So I don't even know. I'm thinking out loud here. I don't know what owners I would want on such a committee. What National League owners have that kind of clout? I don't
think it needs clout. I think it needs someone with a vision, someone with integrity, a couple of men with integrity. I don't know how many of the owners are.
That's a tough thing in baseball, you know.
Yeah, I know.
In ownership.
Jeff Wilpon, yeah.
No, you don't want the Wilpons.
No, I know that, yeah.
Well,
I really don't know. It's a tough call.
Doesn't Magic Johnson have a piece of the Dodgers?
I don't know.
I thought he did. I might be wrong on it. But
I wish we still have Peter O'Malley, and he was a well-respected owner. That's
it. Yeah, that's what you need. That's what I'm saying.
Bob Lurie was a well-respected owner, but those guys aren't there anymore.
No.
You know. So it may be that it falls to the commissioner with some input from a guy like Joe Torre, who is a major domo in baseball's front office.
Yes.
But it's a tough call. It really is, because, as Alan said, you take away draft choices, that's a major thing. That's the lifeblood of an organization.
Right.
And how many do you take away? Do you do it for 1 year? Do you do it for 5 years? You could really, that could be the old college football used to have the death penalty. Remember the death penalty?
Right, yeah.
Well, that could be the death penalty for the Astros.
Baylor.
Maybe they deserve to die. I don't know. But, I mean, it's astounding that they went to the lengths that they went to and didn't even attempt to cover it up, really. Made very little attempt to cover it up. They denied it when they were confronted by it. But there's no denying it. Here's the pictures. Here's the emails. What are you denying, you know?
Yeah, it's the old line about who are you going to believe, me or your own eyes?
Yeah, your cheating eyes, yeah.
And, you know, the funny, it was such a jerry-rigged system. I mean, it wasn't even sophisticated. You know, this guy sitting there eating peanuts and banging on a drum. I mean,
I know.
It's almost comical. You know, if it
they had that guy in Cleveland who was sitting in the bleachers over there and banging a drum for years and years.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Probably what they got the idea from.
That's a fan. That was just
a fan. I know. That's probably where they got that idea from.
Well, I would doubt that, but because that guy's been out there for years. You know, you
think they'd be a little more sophisticated than
right,
this,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, a little more subterfuge, you know, if you're going to pull this thing off.
Well, that's why I mentioned it before. I mean, I think it opens the door to technology that they're looking at. Say, okay, we're going to go past the banging and drumming, but what are we going to do to defeat the system the next time? And
right. Good
the way technology is today, I mean, what's good today is obsolete tomorrow. So
I think there was a book some years ago called "If You Ain't Cheating, You Ain't Trying." Does anybody remember that?
No, there's a book that it ain't cheating if you don't get caught.
All right, there you go. But it's alarming that they would do a thing like this. It's sad.
Yeah,
it's really
sad.
Yeah. Because the integrity of the game is at stake here, and people have to believe, fans have to believe that the game is on the up and up. It took a while after the Black Sox scandal for fans to buy into the game again.
Babe Ruth was the one who pulled it into it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Because he became like a showpiece. He became a major attraction that people wanted to see all those home runs. But
that's why I say Babe Ruth and Jackie Robinson were the two most important baseball players of the 20th century.
I think you could make an argument for that. By all means, there's no question. It's funny, you mentioned Jackie Robinson. When I was a kid, the first game I ever went to see was in 1947, which was Robinson's rookie year. And 50 years later, I was writing a 50th anniversary of Jackie Robinson. And I went around and I called as many people as I could find to talk to me about Jackie and breaking in 1947. And I went to talk to Rachel Robinson, his beautiful wife. What a beautiful, wonderful woman she is. And I said to her, first I have to confess to you that I hated your husband, but it had nothing to do with the color of his skin. It had to do with how he drove giant pitchers crazy with his dancing off first base and stealing second base and so forth. And she laughed. She thought it was very funny. And it was true. I mean, he disrupted, first of all, on the field, he was a great disruptor. But when you think about what he went through off the field and what he did to change the complexion of baseball, remarkable. I mean, that's a sociological revolution that he led.
Yeah, I hated them because they were Dodgers, and I was a big Yankee fan back then. And I was, 14 years old when they left Brooklyn. I didn't want them to leave Brooklyn because I enjoyed the Yankees beating them in the World Series most of the time. But that's how I looked at it back then. If you were not in the Yankees, you were an enemy.
Well, but in those days, nobody was cheating. Nobody was using telescopes, and nobody was using electronics to pick up your signs and to figure out what you were going to do next. You did it based on your ability, on your skills as a player, as a pitcher, as a hitter. And now, with this revelation, you're saying that your hitters aren't good enough to do it on their own. They need an edge. Well, that's unfortunate. If that's true, that's unfortunate. You'd like to think that, and that's why I often told my son the attorney, I said, it's sad you didn't live through the golden age of baseball that I did, where every week you could see Sam Musial coming to town, or you could see Ted Kluszewski or Ewell Blackwell with the Reds, or you could see, God knows, 100 other players who were all-stars and great players who were doing it on their own. They weren't cheating. And they weren't using steroids. You might want to mention that to Barry Bonds the next time you see him. They weren't doing it with PEDs. You might want to mention that to Roger Clemens. And please don't ever tell me that those guys should be in the Hall of Fame, because that in my mind, that is a scourge on the Hall of Fame if those guys get in.
Well, baseball has A-Rod doing Sunday night games, who, if I remember correctly, served a year suspension.
He's reinvented himself.
I know that, yeah.
And, you got to give him credit for that. Would he go in the Hall of Fame? He would not have had my vote if I had a vote.
No, he won't be eligible.
I don't know how many of his 600 home runs were legitimate.
Yeah, he won't be on the list, I think, for another 2 years. But they've got two great names.
That's what I'm saying. If you're going to just look at the statistics, I mean, one of my favorite players was Rafael Palmeiro, who had 3,000 hits and 500 home runs. In my day, either one of those numbers was an automatic ticket to Cooperstown. He had both of those numbers, but it turns out that he was doing funny things.
Yeah.
And he never got more than 5% of the vote. He got off the ballot right away.
My two favorite newcomers on the ballot this year are the immortal Adam Dunn, who 1 year hit 159, and the relief pitcher J.J. Putz. Yeah, they're on the ballot. They're on the ballot this year because they have 10 years. Because they have 10 years in.
Yeah, but isn't there a selection committee that screens the ballot and decides?
Not the first time.
Be on the ballot.
Not the first time. If they get nothing,
really?
Or whatever, nothing the first time around, then they're off.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
There was a time when they had a screening committee. How do I know that? I was on it. I was on a screening committee at one time.
But now I think that anybody who has 10 years and is on the ballot the first time, if they don't get any, 5% or whatever the number is at this point, that's it for them.
Well, you look out for J.J. Putz. He's liable to sneak up on us.
Yeah, and Adam Dunn is was lucky he had a 200 career average. Yeah.
Well, Adam Dunn had a couple of good years with Washington. He was a slugger for them for a while.
He never hit for average. You know.
No, a lot of them don't hit for average anymore.
I know, but he was extreme.
I'm surprised he's out of baseball 5 years already. Doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, well, Jeter is the headliner for the newcomers this year.
Yes, sure, of course.
And he's not going to get 100% because certain people like Andre Dawson are pissed at him because he fired them right when he took over the Marlins.
Yeah, well, he'll get in. I'm sure he'll get in.
Oh, that's not. Yeah, but they were ready with
they don't vote. They're not voting.
No, but in the they made such a thing out of Mariano Rivera last year, and I think the reason that he got 100% is the votes are made public now.
Well, they can be. You don't have to. You don't have to release your ballot.
Oh, you don't? Okay, I thought they made it mandatory.
No. It's up to you. It's up to the voter.
Okay, because that's why you couldn't identify who voted against Aaron, Musial, or Seaver, or any of the people who should have gotten 100%. Mays, I mean, Mantle, you don't know who voted against
I know that I'm a dinosaur. I know that I'm a dinosaur.
Yeah.
But when you rattle off those names and you compare them to the players of today, to me, there's no comparison.
Well, me neither.
Those names were immortals, and these guys they're nice players, but not the same class, not as far as I'm concerned. Especially not if they need technology to figure out what pitch is coming. Hank Aaron never had anybody tell him what pitch was coming.
No.
I often said this. I covered a lot of other sports besides baseball, including golf and including tennis. And both golf and tennis require absolute silence during the game, during the play of the moment.
Yeah, I know.
And I said, well, wait a minute. The golfer, the ball is not moving; it's sitting there, and nobody's making a sound. Hank Aaron, the ball was moving 95 miles an hour, and people were screaming, and he hit home run. He hit 755 home runs. So there's, you got to give him credit, I think.
Oh,
that was what Willie Mays said that when he tried to hand at golf, and he hit him pretty well, and the ball isn't moving. I mean,
yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, when it comes to baseball too, I'll tell you guys, some players don't even want to know what the pitch is.
That's right.
They feel that they have enough instinct baseball wise and knowing and the spin and all that kind of stuff and the tendencies of a pitcher that some of them will tell you. And I was coaching at one time, and I remember telling a bunch of the kids I was coaching, I could give them whatever the pitch was because I could see it from the catcher's, the catcher's waggling his fingers and not paying attention. This was down in like high school or American Legion ball. But some of the players back then said to me, Mr. Case, I'd rather not know. And I think in the situation of the great hitters like Mays and Aaron and Ruth and Gehrig and Cobb and all that, Williams,
yeah.
They didn't want to know the pitch.
Oh.
They were going to hit whatever was thrown at them, and if it was in their strike zone, they were going to hit it. And if there were two strikes, they were going to protect the plate, and they were going to, not try to hit one out, but just put the ball in play. That's the way the
Ted
game
Williams
used to
once
be
said
played.
he could tell what the pitch was going to be from the first two rotations out of the pitcher's hand.
Right. Yeah, well, Ted Williams had that very keen eyesight, and he said that he could pick up the spin of the ball. He was had 20-10 or whatever. He could pick up something at 20 feet that the average 20/20 vision could only get at 20 feet. So
usually was probably like that also. Yeah.
George, did you ever talk?
All you guys need to know about the modern state of baseball, our favorite sport, is that Harold Baines is in the Hall of Fame.
Oh yeah, I went ballistic last year when they announced that.
That's all.
I didn't even want to bring that up. So
yeah, the other thing that drove me ballistic last year was, Pujols was approaching 2,000 RBIs, and they're listing the RBI leads. They didn't have Ruth in there. And, well, it didn't become an official statistic till 1920. So Ruth hit 49 home runs during this time with the Red Sox with 0 RBIs. I mean, it's just
changed.
Yeah, I know. It just doesn't make any sense at all.
I know.
George, I wanted to ask you a quick question because we were just talking about spin rate. Did you ever talk to your dad about picking up that spin? The reason I ask is one time I was covering the Orioles opening day. I think they're playing Kansas City, and I was out on the field before the game, and Vita Blue was throwing batting practice. I just got behind the cage, and he wasn't putting much on the ball, and he was just zipping them in there. As far as I was concerned, there was like lightning bolts coming down.
Right.
And I couldn't pick up any spin on the ball. I was lucky to be able to see it come down to the plate. But that's one thing that always amazes me about the game. Two things: that major league ball players and minor league, I guess too, can actually see the ball, spin of the ball as it comes at them at 95 miles an hour, and the other one is watching an outfielder go out and catch that little tiny pill out there in center field that he has to race over to, and I don't know how the hell they get to it and catch it. But
well, David, that's an interesting point. I never remember hearing my dad talk about that specific subject about spin, but Ted Williams claimed, and people claimed, that he could pick up the spin because of his eyesight. Now, I'm not sure how many ball players can do that, but on the other hand, they're going to be waiting for their pitch, or they're going to be looking at a guy. So a lot of them guess. I'll tell you right now, batters will guess, and if a guy's got a tendency that he's going to throw a fastball or a curveball a certain situation or a certain count, they're going to guess on that, and sometimes they're going to guess right, and sometimes they're going to guess wrong, and so that's why if somebody's hitting 300, that means they've been wrong 7 out of 10 times.
Right. Yeah, I just think it's an amazing ability.
Oh, it is, no question about it. I remember my dad telling me, he said, Ted Williams has the best hand-eye coordination that he ever saw.
Yeah, he wouldn't be alone in that thought.
That's the secret. That's the difference between me and Ted Williams.
What Ted Williams and the rest of the world.
No question about it. That's the way it is. I mean, guys, he was in a unique situation. I mean, he was a fantastic hitter, but he was blessed with certain skill. And that eyesight thing was huge for him. And the other part of it was that when he would teach batting, he'd tell the hitters, with the expansion senators in particular, he'd say, wait till you get your pitch. And that's one of the reasons why Williams walked so many times, and why umpires used to say, well, if Ted thought that was a strike, he would have swung.
That's right.
Yeah.
Then there was a line about Bob Feller. Somebody, I think it was Yogi, was at bat, and Feller threw a pitch, and Yogi took it, and the umpire called it a strike. And Yogi complained, and the umpire said, if Feller threw it, it was a strike.
There's a story with Yogi and Derek Jeter. When Derek Jeter was swinging at the bad pitches, and he was in a slump, and he says to Berra, well, Yogi, you swung at bad pitches all the time. And Yogi said, yeah, but I hit them.
He did. I can remember. He hit a couple of home runs on balls that bounced in front of him.
I know, yeah.
So they did. That's what he was. He was a notorious bad ball hitter. Absolutely.
Right. Well, gentlemen, this has been a fun conversation, and I want to end it by recommending that you go see the movie Bang the Drum Slowly, because it's a terrific film.
Absolutely.
It is. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right.
Well, good topic, Hal. Well done. Nice talking to you guys.
Thank you, Hal.
Talk to you next week.
See you next week.
Take care, everyone.
Next week.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Good night, everybody. Good night.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices, and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.